So last Friday, October 21st, the internet experienced a huge DDoS attack and everybody's talking about it. But what exactly is a DDoS attack? Well, we're going to find out. So, let's say you're angry, you're pissed off, and you want to shut down somebody's website, and you're a hacker. So, you try to hack it. But, of course, the website has very tight security, as most websites do. It's pretty difficult to hack into a large website, and we're hearing reports that Twitter, Starbucks, Netflix, all these sites went down. So, how did that happen? Well, first of all, what is DOS? DOS stands for Denial of Service, which means basically legitimate users of the site don't get any service. Now, how does that work? Well, let's say we've got this legitimate junky web server here in the corner, and on the right we've got all these computers that are legitimate customers, and they're sending traffic back and forth between the website and the computer. So if you wanted to shut this website down, you get a big, massive hacker server that's got way more traffic capacity than the legitimate web server, and you just flood it with requests. Just send it a whole bunch of data, and now the legitimate web server gets totally overloaded, and no more traffic goes to the legitimate customers. So, how do you fix that? Well, every server has an IP address. So if a big hacker server is sending you a whole bunch of traffic, you just introduce a firewall, and the firewall blocks the traffic from the big hacker server, and now all the legitimate computers can still send and receive traffic with the legitimate web server, and there's nothing to stop them. Until DDoS. So what's DDoS? Well, it stands for Distributed Denial of Service. Here's how it works. You've got a hacker somewhere, and he makes a virus, and he viruses up a whole bunch of legitimate computers, and they turn into his bots. And we're talking about millions of computers. So millions of computers are now under remote control by this hacker. And there are computers in your house, computers in your office, computers everywhere. So now, every computer, of course, has its own address. And now all these little computers are sending tons of traffic to the legitimate web server, and they're all under control of the hacker. So the legitimate web server gets flooded, and now it can't receive any more traffic from the legitimate customers, and the firewall can't stop it because the illegitimate traffic is coming from the same place, from many different computers. So that results in the website not being available. And how many websites went down? Well, everybody went down. Imager, Netflix, Starbucks, HBO, BBC, CNN, Fox, PayPal, Amazon. But these have huge servers. So how did they get the capacity to shut down that many sites? And the answer is, if we look at Google's data center, it's absolutely massive. Every web server has a numerical address. So for example, Starbucks is 8.8.8.8 and DirecTV is 4.4.43.41 and Imager is 10.45.73.12. This is called an IP address. But humans can't remember IP addresses very well, and so you don't type in an IP address to get to Imager. You'll get confused. You would much rather remember a URL, a very easy to remember name. So how does that happen? Well, let's say you want to go to starbucks.com. The first thing is, somewhere on the internet is this big fat DNS server, and the DNS server stands for domain name server, and the domain name server translates It's www.starbucks.com, which is good for humans to remember, into 8.8.8.8, which is good for computers to figure out. So your computer says, hey, what is www.starbucks.com? DNS server looks in its table and it says, oh, it's 8.8.8.8, and it communicates with the Starbucks server now because it knows the IP address. So this attack was very special. So the reason this attack was special was two reasons. First of all, the hackers didn't just virus up legitimate computers, they also virused up the Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things is other devices that besides your computer that are on the internet. So a baby monitor, a legitimate computer, a Wi-Fi router, surveillance cameras. And the reason these devices are on the internet is because, let's say you wanted to watch your baby from a hotel while you were on vacation, or you wanted to make changes to your router while you were at work or whatever. You need to be able to access the internet. These devices need to be able to access the internet. And more importantly, they also need to get updates from the internet because they run software and they're connected to the cloud. So the average house has 12 or 15 of these devices. And so the hackers, they basically just scan the internet for these things, virused them up, and now they had a botnet. This time the hackers didn't try to flood the legitimate web servers like Starbucks.com server or Netflix.com server. No. They just flooded the DNS server, which provides a translation of the names to the IP addresses. They took out it's basically like somebody destroying your phone book. So now you couldn't call any of your relatives or friends. Of course, nobody uses phone books these days, but computers still need the DNS server, and they need to check the DNS server all the time. So now we've got these Internet of Things devices, and they're flooding the DNS server, and they're flooding it, and now when legitimate people are trying to access the DNS server so they can figure out where their websites are located, they're getting bounced back because the DNS server is overloaded. And the firewall can't stop any of this traffic. Now, the virus that they use is called Mirai, and it had a throughput when the botnet took over of 1.2 trillion bits per second. That's like the amount of traffic caused by downloading 1,200 movies per second. And how did they do that? Well, people are dumb. So what Mirai does is it looks for default logins on Internet of Things devices. So when you buy your router, or your ISP sells you a router or a webcam or whatever you bought, it's got a default login, probably usernames admin and the passwords admin or whatever. So Mirai just scans the whole internet looking for devices, and it checks to see if the default login didn't get changed. And if it didn't get changed, boom, it can log in, take over that device, and now that device is a drone basically. They can command it to attack a site anytime they want. Now, who did this and why did they do it? Well, there's a hacking group called the New Hacking Group, and the talk is that they did it to avenge the cutting of the internet for Julian Assange, who's stuck in an embassy in Ecuador, and he's been leaking Hillary Clinton's emails, and they're not too happy with him now, so they cut off his internet. And the hacking group says, how would you like it if that happened to you? So now they cut off our internet. And the company that provided the DNS server, they're called DEN. And they're one of the largest. They provide traffic optimization. And We don't know if they're gonna come up with a plan to be able to recover from this attack. Any questions? Leave a comment and we'll answer your questions.